The blood on the physician's handkerchief was the final proof Katherine needed that her dream of bearing children would never come true. And as she sat in that musty Kansas City office in 1882, she wondered if any man would ever want a woman whose womb had been declared empty by 3 different doctors. The physician, an elderly man with spectacles perched on his nose, had delivered the news with clinical detachment, explaining that the scarlet fever she had survived as a girl had left damage that no amount of prayer or medicine could repair. Katherine Bennett walked out of that office into the bustling streets, her heart heavy with a grief that felt like drowning, and she knew she had to leave this city where everyone knew her shame. At 23 years old, Katherine had already endured 2 broken engagements. The first man, Thomas, had courted her for 6 months before his mother discovered Katherine's condition and forbade the marriage. The second, William, had proposed with genuine affection, but after learning the truth, he had looked at her with such pity that Katherine wished she could disappear into the earth itself. The whispers followed her everywhere in Kansas City, the sympathetic glances from married women, the way mothers steered their sons away from her at church socials. She could not bear another day of being seen as broken, defective, less than a real woman. Her cousin Beatrice had written from Fargo, North Dakota, describing the growing frontier town where the Northern Pacific Railroad had brought prosperity and opportunity. Beatrice ran a boarding house and offered Katherine a fresh start, a place where no one knew her history, where she could work and live without the constant reminder of what she could never have. Katherine packed her belongings into a single trunk, said goodbye to her elderly parents who wept but understood, and boarded a train heading north. The journey took 3 days, and with each mile that passed, Katherine tried to shed her old identity like a snake shedding skin. Fargo in late spring was a revelation. The Red River flowed with snowmelt, and the town bustled with lumber workers, farmers, railroad men, and merchants building their fortunes in this northern prairie. Beatrice's boarding house stood on a respectable street, a 2-story structure painted yellow with white trim. Her cousin, a plump woman of 40 with kind eyes and capable hands, embraced Katherine warmly and showed her to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor. "You look tired, dear," Beatrice said, studying Katherine's face. "The journey must have been exhausting." "It's not just the journey," Katherine admitted quietly. "It's everything I left behind." Beatrice squeezed her hand. "Then we won't speak of Kansas City unless you wish to. Here, you're just my cousin Katherine, come to help me run this establishment. The rest is nobody's business." Katherine found work helping Beatrice manage the boarding house, cooking meals for the residents, changing linens, and keeping the accounts. The work was honest and kept her hands busy, though it could not entirely quiet her mind. She noticed how the married women in Fargo walked with their children, how they rested protective hands on swollen bellies, and each time the old wound opened fresh. But she was determined to build a life here, even if it would be a solitary one. 3 months passed before Isaac Quinn walked into Beatrice's boarding house asking about a room. Katherine was in the front parlor, mending a tablecloth, when she heard the door open and looked up to see a tall man in his early 30s with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that fell across his forehead. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowman, boots dusty from travel, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that suggested he was accustomed to hard living. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I'm looking for lodging for a few weeks, possibly longer. I've been told Mrs. Fletcher runs a respectable house." "She does," Katherine replied, setting down her mending. "I'm her cousin, Katherine Bennett. Let me fetch her for you." But Beatrice was out marketing, and Katherine found herself showing Isaac the available room herself. As they climbed the stairs, she was aware of his presence behind her, solid and somehow reassuring. The room was at the end of the hall, modest but clean with a window overlooking the street. "It's simple but comfortable," Katherine said. "Meals are included, breakfast at 6 and supper at 7. Laundry is extra." Isaac stepped into the room, glancing around with an appraising eye before nodding. "This will do fine. I'm Isaac Quinn. I've been working cattle down in Wyoming Territory, but I'm looking to settle something more permanent here. Got family considerations." Katherine felt that familiar squeeze in her chest at the word family, but kept her expression neutral. "Welcome to Fargo, Mr. Quinn. I'll let Mrs. Fletcher know you've taken the room when she returns." Over the following days, Katherine found herself increasingly aware of Isaac's presence in the boarding house. He was quieter than the other residents, often reading in the parlor after supper or writing letters by lamplight. Unlike some of the rough men who passed through, he was courteous, always thanking her for meals, helping carry heavy items without being asked, and treating her with a respect that felt genuine rather than performative. One evening, about a week after his arrival, Isaac found Katherine in the kitchen washing dishes after supper. The other residents had dispersed, and Beatrice had retired early with a headache. "Miss Bennett, might I have a word?" Isaac asked from the doorway. Katherine dried her hands on her apron, curious. "Of course, Mr. Quinn." He stepped into the kitchen, looking somewhat uncomfortable, his hat in his hands. "I wanted to explain my situation. You mentioned that I said I had family considerations, and I don't want there to be any misunderstanding about my circumstances." "You don't owe me any explanation," Katherine said quickly, though she was intensely curious. "I know, but I'd rather be plain about things." Isaac leaned against the doorframe. "I have 3 children. My wife Sarah died 2 years ago, bringing our youngest into the world. The baby died too. My oldest, Emma, is 10. Then there's Michael, who's 7, and little Daniel, who's 5. They've been living with Sarah's sister and her husband on their farm outside Fargo, but it's been a strain on them. They've got 6 children of their own, and while they've been good to take mine in, I can see it's too much." Katherine felt her heart constrict with sympathy. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Quinn. That must have been terrible." "It was the worst thing I've ever lived through," Isaac said quietly. "I threw myself into work afterward, took jobs that kept me away because I couldn't stand to see Sarah's things, to sleep in the bed we'd shared. But I can't keep running. Those children need their father, and I need to make a proper home for them. That's why I came to Fargo. I'm looking to buy land, start my own ranch, bring my kids home." "That's admirable," Katherine said. "They're lucky to have a father who cares so much." Isaac's expression was troubled. "I'm not sure they'd agree. I've been gone more than I've been present these past 2 years. I have a lot to make up for." Something in his honesty touched Katherine deeply. Here was a man who acknowledged his shortcomings, who was trying to do right by his children despite his grief. It was more than many men would do. The following Sunday, Beatrice insisted Katherine take the afternoon off and attend the community picnic by the river. Katherine was reluctant, knowing such gatherings often involved well-meaning matrons trying to matchmake, but Beatrice was insistent. "You've worked yourself to the bone since you arrived," Beatrice said firmly. "Go, enjoy the sunshine, talk to people your own age." Katherine wore her best day dress, a soft blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and walked to the riverside park where tables had been set up and families spread blankets on the grass. She was standing near the lemonade table, feeling awkward and out of place when she heard a familiar voice. "Miss Bennett, what a pleasant surprise." She turned to find Isaac approaching with 3 children in tow. The oldest, a girl with serious dark eyes and her father's features, held the hand of a small boy with a mop of curly hair. Another boy, gangly and freckled, walked beside Isaac. "Mr. Quinn," Katherine said, smiling. "You must be Emma, Michael, and Daniel." The children regarded her with the cautious wariness of those who had learned to be careful around strangers. Isaac laid a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "This is Miss Bennett. She helps run the boarding house where I'm staying. Are you going to marry our papa?" Daniel asked with the blunt curiosity of a 5-year-old. "Daniel," Emma hissed, mortified. Katherine felt her face flush, but Isaac laughed, a warm sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "That's not a question you ask people, son," he said, though there was no real reproach in his tone. "Miss Bennett is a friend." "I'm pleased to meet you all," Katherine said, recovering her composure. "Your father speaks very highly of you." Michael squinted up at her. "Do you know how to catch fish? Papa said we could fish in the river." "I'm afraid I'm not much of a fisherwoman," Katherine admitted, "but I make excellent biscuits." "Papa can't make biscuits," Daniel volunteered. "They come out like rocks." The afternoon passed more pleasantly than Katherine had anticipated. She found herself sitting on a blanket with Isaac and his children, watching as the boys ran off to play with other children while Emma stayed close, still reserved but gradually warming. The girl had her mother's memory fresh enough to be protective of it, Katherine sensed, and would not easily accept any woman in her father's life. "She's very mature for 10, Katherine observed quietly to Isaac. "She had to grow up fast," Isaac replied, his expression pained. "After Sarah died, Emma tried to mother the boys. I hate that she lost her childhood that way." "Children are resilient," Katherine said. "What she needs now is to be allowed to be a child again. You being here will help with that." Isaac studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're good with them. Do you have siblings?" "2 brothers, both older," Katherine said. "They're married now with families of their own back in Kansas City." "But you came here alone," Katherine hesitated, then decided on a version of the truth. "I needed a fresh start." "Sometimes staying where you are isn't the kindest thing you can do for yourself." Isaac nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she had said. "I know something about that." Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Isaac would bring his children to visit on Sundays after church, and Katherine found herself looking forward to these gatherings with an anticipation that both thrilled and frightened her. She taught Emma how to embroider, listened to Michael's endless questions about everything from clouds to why horses had hooves, and read stories to Daniel, who would climb into her lap with the trusting affection of a child starved for maternal attention. Isaac watched these interactions with an expression Katherine could not quite read. Sometimes she would catch him looking at her with something that might have been hope, and her heart would perform an uncomfortable flip in her chest. She reminded herself not to imagine things that could never be. Even if Isaac was attracted to her, even if he might consider courting her, once he learned the truth about her condition, he would withdraw just as Thomas and William had. A man with 3 children would certainly want more. It was the way of things, but Isaac seemed in no hurry to court anyone. He spent his days searching for suitable land, consulting with bankers about loans, and making plans for the ranch he intended to build. In the evenings, he would sit in the boarding house parlor and discuss his plans with Katherine, asking her opinion on everything from how much acreage he needed to what kind of cattle would thrive in the Dakota climate. "You're talking to the wrong person," Katherine said one evening, laughing. "I grew up in a city. What do I know about ranching?" "You know about keeping a household running smoothly," Isaac countered. "That's its own kind of ranching. And you listen, really listen, instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. That's rare." Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. "You're easy to listen to, Mr. Quinn." I think after all these weeks you could call me Isaac. Only if you call me Katherine. Katherine, he said, testing the name, and she loved the way it sounded in his deep voice. It was Beatrice who finally confronted Katherine about her growing attachment to Isaac. They were in the kitchen one morning, kneading dough for bread, when her cousin spoke up. "That man is falling in love with you," Beatrice said bluntly, Katherine's hands stilled in the dough. "Don't be ridiculous. I've been running this boarding house for 15 years. I know what a man in love looks like, and Isaac Quinn can barely take his eyes off you. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "Nothing," Katherine said, her voice tight. "There's nothing to do. Because of Kansas City. Because of what those doctors said," Katherine had confided in Beatrice shortly after arriving, needing someone to understand why she had fled. Now she regretted it. "You know why," Katherine said. "Isaac has 3 children. Clearly he wants a family." "He'll want more children. I can't give him that." "Have you asked him what he wants?" Beatrice challenged. "Or are you making assumptions? It doesn't matter what he wants. Biology doesn't negotiate." "Katherine Bennett, you're one of the smartest women I know, but you're being remarkably foolish about this. That man lost his wife. He's grieved. He's raised 3 children through that grief. Maybe, just maybe, what he wants now isn't more children. Maybe what he wants is a partner, a companion, someone to share his life with." "You don't understand," Katherine whispered. "The way Thomas looked at me when he found out like I was defective, the pity in William's eyes. I can't endure that again, especially not from Isaac." Beatrice wiped her floury hands on her apron and came around the table to embrace Katherine. "You won't know unless you're honest with him. And if he does turn away, then he wasn't the man you thought he was, and you're better off knowing now." But Katherine could not bring herself to risk it. Instead, she began subtly pulling away from Isaac, making excuses when he asked her to walk with him, pleading work when he invited her to accompany him and the children on outings. She saw the confusion and hurt in his eyes, but told herself it was kinder this way, to end things before they truly began. Isaac, however, was not a man who gave up easily. One evening in late August, he asked Katherine to join him on the front porch after supper. The other residents were inside, and the street was quiet in the twilight. "Have I done something to offend you?" Isaac asked directly, his arms crossed over his chest. "Of course not," Katherine said, unable to meet his eyes. "Then why are you avoiding me? 3 weeks ago we were friends. Now you can barely stand to be in the same room." Katherine's throat tightened. "I think it's better if we maintain some distance. It's more appropriate." "Appropriate," Isaac repeated, and there was an edge to his voice now. "Katherine, I'm not a fool. I know what's happening between us. I feel it every time we're in the same room, and unless I'm completely mistaken, you feel it too." "It doesn't matter what I feel," Katherine said desperately. "How can you say that? Of course it matters." Isaac stepped closer, his expression intense. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah died. I thought that part of my heart was buried with her, but then you came into my life with your kindness, and your quick laugh, and the way you love my children without expecting anything in return. Katherine, I'm falling in love with you." The words she had longed to hear were also the ones she most feared. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "You can't," she whispered. "Too late," Isaac said, reaching out to gently wipe her tears with his thumb. "I already am. And I think you love me too, but something is holding you back. Tell me what it is. Whatever it is, we can face it together." Katherine pulled away from his touch, wrapping her arms around herself. "You don't understand what you're asking. Then help me understand." The words came out in a rush, bitter and painful. "I can't have children, Isaac. My womb is barren. I had scarlet fever as a girl, and it left damage that can never be repaired. 3 different doctors have told me the same thing. That's why I left Kansas City." I was engaged twice, and both times the man left me when he learned the truth. I'm damaged, broken, not a whole woman. And you have 3 beautiful children who deserve a mother who could give them siblings, who could grow your family the way you deserve. I won't let you sacrifice that for me." She was crying in earnest now, all the grief and shame pouring out. Isaac stood very still, absorbing her words, and Katherine braced herself for the inevitable withdrawal, the pity, the awkward goodbye. Instead, Isaac took both her hands in his, holding them firmly when she tried to pull away. "Katherine, look at me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Please look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her tear-stained face to his. "I already have children," Isaac said clearly, deliberately. 3 wonderful, exhausting, perfect children who need a mother not to give them siblings, but to give them love. I don't want more children, Katherine. Sarah and I had 3, and then trying for a 4th killed her and the baby. Do you understand? The thought of going through that again, of risking another woman I love, it terrifies me. I won't do it. I can't. Katherine stared at him, trying to process his words. But most men want large families. I'm not most men. I'm a man who watched his wife bleed to death because we kept trying for one more child. I'm a man who has 3 children who need stability and love, not more siblings. He squeezed her hands. Katherine, the fact that you can't bear children isn't a flaw. To me, it's a relief. It means I never have to worry about losing you the way I lost Sarah. It means we can build a life together without that fear hanging over us. You're serious, Katherine said, her voice barely audible. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I don't want you despite your inability to have children. I want you, Katherine Bennett, exactly as you are. I want your laughter and your stubbornness, and the way you tell Michael his questions aren't annoying even when they clearly are. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know that you're safe, that you're mine, that we have a future together. I already have children. I just need you as my wife. The words broke something open inside Katherine, some hard shell of protection she had built around her heart. She threw her arms around Isaac's neck, and he caught her, holding her tight against his chest as she sobbed into his shirt. "I love you," she said between tears. "I love you so much, and I was so scared." "I love you too," Isaac murmured into her hair, "and you never have to be scared again. We're going to build a life together, all 5 of us." Isaac pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands and kiss her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened into something more urgent, more passionate. Katherine felt as if she were falling and flying at the same time, every nerve in her body alive with sensation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Marry me and help me raise those 3 troublemakers. Marry me and build a ranch with me. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving that you're the only woman I'll ever need." "Yes," Katherine said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, Isaac Quinn, I'll marry you." They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church, with Beatrice as matron of honor and Isaac's brother-in-law standing up for him. Emma, Michael, and Daniel sat in the front pew, dressed in their Sunday best, watching with wide eyes as their father married the woman who had become so important to all of them. Katherine had been nervous about the children's reactions when Isaac first told them about the engagement. Emma, particularly, had been quiet and withdrawn for several days. It was only after Katherine sat down with the girl privately and assured her that she wasn't trying to replace her mother that Emma had finally broken down crying and admitted she was scared Katherine would leave like everyone else seemed to. "I'm not going anywhere," Katherine had promised, holding the sobbing child. "I'm going to be here for you, for your brothers, for your father. I'm going to be here even when you're angry with me or when things are hard. That's what family means." Do I have to call you mother?" Emma had asked in a small voice. "You can call me whatever feels right to you," Katherine had said. "Katherine is fine, or Kate if you prefer. Or maybe someday when you're ready you might want to call me mother, but there's no rush and there's no requirement. Your mother will always be your mother. I'm not trying to take her place. I'm just trying to make a new place, one that's just mine." That seemed to ease something in Emma, and while she remained somewhat reserved, she had begun to warm toward Katherine with increasing trust. The wedding breakfast was held at Beatrice's boarding house, and afterward, Isaac took his new family to see the land he had purchased. It was 5 miles north of Fargo, 200 acres of rolling prairie with a creek running through it and a stand of cottonwoods that would provide shade in summer. The house was still being built, but the frame was up, and Katherine could envision the home it would become. "What do you think?" Isaac asked, his arm around her waist as they surveyed the property. "I think it's perfect," Katherine said honestly. "I think we're going to be very happy here." The first months of their marriage were an adjustment for everyone. They lived in the boarding house while the ranch house was completed, and Katherine learned the rhythms of being a wife and instant mother to 3 children with very different personalities and needs. Emma was responsible, but carried too much worry on her young shoulders. Michael was curious and energetic, always into something. Daniel was affectionate but had nightmares about his mother's death, waking sometimes screaming for her. Katherine learned to soothe Daniel's nightmares, to channel Michael's energy into useful tasks, and to gradually convince Emma that it was acceptable to be a child rather than a miniature adult. Isaac was patient and loving, supporting Katherine when she felt overwhelmed and stepping in when the children tested boundaries. Their physical relationship was a revelation to Katherine. Isaac was gentle and attentive, making her feel cherished and desired in ways she had never experienced. There was no anxiety about pregnancy, no worry that intimacy might lead to a dangerous childbirth. Instead, there was simply the joy of 2 people who loved each other expressing that love freely. By November, the ranch house was complete. It was a sturdy 2-story structure with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a parlor with a stone fireplace. Isaac had built it with Katherine's input, including details like extra windows for light and a deep pantry for preserving food. The children each had their own small bedroom, and Isaac and Katherine had a larger room at the end of the hall. Moving day was chaotic and exciting. Beatrice came to help, along with several neighbors who had befriended the Quinn family. By nightfall, they were exhausted but settled into their new home. After tucking the children into bed, Isaac and Katherine stood on their front porch, looking out at the moonlit prairie. "This is ours," Katherine said wonderingly. "All of this is really ours." "Ours," Isaac confirmed, pulling her close. "Everything I have is yours, Katherine. The land, the house, my heart, those 3 sleeping children in there who think you hung the moon, all of it." "I never thought I could have this," Katherine admitted. "A husband, children, a home. I thought that door was closed to me forever." "Some doors close so better ones can open," Isaac said. "If you hadn't left Kansas City, if I hadn't lost Sarah, we never would have found each other. I'm not glad for the pain either of us went through, but I'm grateful it led us here." The first year on the ranch tested them in ways neither had anticipated. The winter was brutal, with temperatures plunging below 0 and snowdrifts piling as high as the windows. Isaac and the hired men he had taken on worked constantly to keep the cattle fed and prevent losses. Katherine learned to manage a ranch household, preserving food, making soap, teaching the children their lessons since the nearest school was too far for daily travel. There were hard times when money was tight, and worry kept them awake at night. There were moments of friction when Katherine and Isaac disagreed about how to handle the children or ranch decisions. Emma went through a phase of rebellion, testing Katherine's authority and patience. Michael broke his arm falling from a tree, giving them all a terrible scare. Daniel struggled with reading, and it took months of patient work to help him gain confidence. But there were also moments of profound joy. The first time Emma voluntarily called Katherine mother, Katherine had to leave the room to compose herself, so overwhelmed was she with emotion. The day Michael proudly showed off the calf he had raised from birth, his face glowing with accomplishment. The night Daniel told Katherine she gave the best hugs in the whole world. The quiet evenings when Isaac would read aloud to the family by the fireplace, his deep voice filling their home with stories. In their second year, the ranch began to turn a real profit. Isaac's careful management and hard work paid off, and they were able to expand their herd and make improvements to the property. Katherine planted a garden that flourished, and her preserves became sought after at the Fargo market. The children thrived with the stability and love that surrounded them. It was during this time that Katherine faced her first real test as a mother. Emma, now 12 and on the cusp of womanhood, came to her in tears one afternoon, frightened by the changes in her body. Katherine held the girl and explained what was happening, sharing information and comfort that Emma's own mother would have provided had she lived. Afterward, Emma clung to Katherine and whispered thank you over and over, and Katherine knew that whatever boundaries had remained between them had finally dissolved. She was truly Emma's mother now, in all the ways that mattered. The community around them grew as well. More settlers arrived, drawn by the railroad and the opportunities in Dakota territory. A small school was established within riding distance, and the children began attending regularly, coming home with stories and new friends. Katherine became involved in the church ladies' auxiliary, forming friendships with other ranch wives who shared her challenges and triumphs. One afternoon, nearly 3 years after her marriage, Katherine was in town shopping when she encountered a woman from Kansas City. Mrs. Dennison had been one of the worst gossips, always ready with a pitying look or a cutting remark about Katherine's condition. Now, seeing Katherine happy and clearly thriving, the woman's expression was almost comical in its surprise. "Katherine Bennett, is that really you?" Mrs. Dennison asked. "It's Isaac Quinn now," Katherine said pleasantly. "How nice to see a familiar face, Mrs. Dennison. You've married, but I thought, that is, we all understood that you couldn't." She trailed off, her face reddening. "I married a wonderful man," Katherine said firmly. "Isaac Quinn. We have a ranch north of town and 3 beautiful children. 3 children, but how?" Mrs. Dennison looked thoroughly confused. "They're my husband's children from his first marriage," Katherine explained. "And they're mine now, too, in every way that matters. I'm very blessed." She excused herself and continued her shopping, leaving Mrs. Dennison gaping after her. Katherine felt a surge of satisfaction. She had spent so many years in Kansas City feeling like a failure, believing the whispers that she was less than a complete woman. Now she understood that those people had been wrong. Motherhood was not just about childbirth. It was about love, sacrifice, patience, and showing up every day for the children who needed you. By that measure, Katherine was as much a mother as any woman who had given birth. That evening she told Isaac about the encounter, and he laughed, pulling her into his arms. "I wish I could have seen her face," he said. "You're happy, aren't you, Katherine? Truly happy." "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Katherine said honestly. "There are hard days, of course. Days when I'm exhausted or worried, or when the children drive me to distraction. But yes, I'm deeply, profoundly happy. You gave me that, Isaac. You and Emma and Michael and Daniel. You gave me a life I thought I could never have. You gave us just as much, Isaac said seriously. This house was empty before you came into it. We were going through motions, surviving but not really living. You brought warmth and laughter and love back into our lives. You made us a family again. They stood together on their porch, watching the sun set over the prairie they now called home, and Katherine sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. She had traveled so far from that doctor's office in Kansas City, where she had learned her womb was barren. She had traveled through grief and shame and fear. But that journey had brought her here, to this man, this family, this life. In their 4th year together, they faced their greatest challenge yet. A harsh winter had decimated their herd, and they lost nearly 1/3 of their cattle to cold and disease. The financial blow was severe, and they had to take out a loan to survive until they could rebuild. Isaac was devastated, blaming himself for not preparing better, and Katherine had to be the strong one, holding their family together when he faltered. "We'll recover," she told him night after night. "We have each other, we have the children, the cattle can be replaced. What matters is that we're all healthy and together." It took 2 hard years of scrimping and sacrifice, but they paid off the loan and rebuilt their herd. The experience brought them even closer, proving that their partnership could weather genuine hardship. The children, too, learned valuable lessons about resilience and perseverance as they watched their parents work tirelessly to save their ranch. Emma, now 15, had become Katherine's right hand, helping manage the household and even assisting with the ranch accounts. She had a natural head for numbers and talked about perhaps becoming a teacher someday. Michael, at 12, was his father's shadow, learning everything Isaac could teach him about ranching and already talking about the spread he would have of his own one day. Daniel, at 10, remained the family's tender heart, the one who would bring Katherine wildflowers and write her poems for her birthday. On Katherine's 30th birthday, Isaac surprised her with a beautiful bay mare, gentle and perfectly trained. "Every ranch wife needs a good horse," he said, grinning at her delighted expression. "And I thought you might like to ride with me sometimes when we check the herds." Katherine named the mare Blessing, because that's what her life had become, an endless succession of blessings she had never expected to receive. She learned to ride well, and she and Isaac would take long rides across their property, sometimes bringing the children, sometimes just the two of them, stealing moments of privacy to talk and laugh and simply be together. It was during one of these rides in the spring of their 6th year of marriage that Katherine and Isaac reached the creek that bordered their property and dismounted to rest the horses. They sat on the bank, hands linked, watching the water flow. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked quietly. "Marrying me instead of a woman who could have given you more children?" Isaac turned to her, his expression fierce. "Never, not once, not for a single moment. Katherine, you are the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was praying. Yes, I loved Sarah. She was my first love, and she gave me 3 incredible children. But what we have is different, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in this world." "You know why?" "Why?" Katherine asked, her throat tight with emotion. "Because I don't spend every night terrified that pregnancy will kill you. Because we have a true partnership, where we make decisions together and support each other. Because I've watched you transform my grieving, lost children into confident, happy young people. Because when I look at you, I see my future, not my past. Because I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living, really living, and it's all because you chose to build this life with me." Katherine kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. When they finally pulled apart, Isaac smiled and reached into his pocket. "I got you something else," he said, pulling out a small leather pouch. "Open it." Inside was a delicate gold locket on a chain. Katherine opened it and found it contained 4 small photographs clearly taken recently, though she had no idea when. There was Isaac, looking handsome and serious. Emma, Michael, and Daniel, all smiling at the camera. "Your family," Isaac said softly, "always with you no matter where you go." Katherine's eyes filled with tears as she clasped the locket around her neck. "It's perfect, thank you." The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. Emma graduated from school and began teaching at the local schoolhouse, boarding in town during the week, but coming home every weekend. She eventually married a kind young farmer, and Katherine helped plan the wedding with a mother's pride and joy. Michael took on more and more responsibility at the ranch, becoming Isaac's true partner in the operation. Daniel surprised everyone by showing an aptitude for veterinary medicine, apprenticing with the local veterinarian and dreaming of attending college back east to study formally. Katherine and Isaac aged together, their hair graying, their bodies bearing the marks of hard work and good living. But their love only deepened with time, weathering storms both literal and figurative. They were genuine partners in every sense, sharing work and dreams and the quiet companionship that comes from truly knowing another person. One evening, when Katherine was 38 and they had been married for 12 years, the whole family gathered for Sunday supper at the ranch. Emma was there with her husband Robert and their baby daughter, Sarah, named for Emma's mother. Michael brought his sweetheart Clara, a rancher's daughter he was courting. Daniel was home from his apprenticeship, full of stories about the animals he had helped treat. Katherine looked around the table at this family she had somehow become the center of, and her heart was so full she thought it might burst. Isaac caught her eye and smiled, that warm smile that still made her stomach flip even after all these years. After supper, while the young people cleaned up, Isaac took Katherine's hand and led her out to the porch, their favorite spot for quiet conversation. "You remember the night I told you I loved you?" Isaac asked, his arm around her shoulders. "On Beatrice's porch when you were trying to push me away." "I remember every word," Katherine said. "You told me you already had children and you just needed me as your wife." "Best thing I ever said," Isaac declared. "Look at what we've built, Katherine. Look at that table in there, full of people we love. That's our legacy. Not just the ranch, not just the land, but the love we've poured into these children and now their children." "Little Sarah is perfect, isn't she?" Katherine said, her voice soft. "When Emma let me hold her for the first time, I thought my heart would break with joy. I'm a grandmother now, Isaac. Me, the woman who was told she would never have a family. You're not just a grandmother. You're the center of this family, the heart of our home. You always have been." Isaac kissed her temple. "I thank God every day for your supposed barrenness, Katherine, because it brought you to me. It meant I never had to fear losing you to childbirth. It meant we could build exactly the life we wanted without that shadow hanging over us." Katherine leaned into his embrace, contentment washing over her. "I used to think I was broken," she confessed. "I used to believe that my inability to bear children made me less than whole. But you taught me that wholeness has nothing to do with what your body can or cannot do. It's about who you are, how you love, what you build with your life. You're the strongest, most complete person I know," Isaac said firmly. "And I'm proud every single day that you're my wife." They sat together as the sun set, painting the prairie sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside, they could hear laughter and conversation, the sounds of family and home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new moments to navigate. But they would face it all together as they always had. Michael appeared in the doorway, Clara beside him. "Father, Katherine, could you come in for a moment? We have some news to share." Inside, the family gathered again, and Michael stood with Clara's hand in his. He was nervous, Katherine could tell, fidgeting with his hat. "Clara and I are getting married," Michael announced, breaking into a huge grin. "And we want to do it here on the ranch, if that's all right. This is home, and I can't imagine starting our life together anywhere else." The room erupted in congratulations and happy chaos. Katherine hugged Michael, then Clara, welcoming the girl into their family. Isaac was beaming, shaking Michael's hand and clapping him on the back. Emma was already planning the wedding, and Daniel was teasing his brother good-naturedly. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Katherine and Isaac prepared for bed. Katherine sat at her dressing table, removing her hairpins, and Isaac came up behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Another wedding to plan," he said, smiling. "Our boy is all grown up." "They grow up so fast," Katherine said. "It seems like just yesterday Michael was asking me endless questions about clouds and why the sky was blue." "You've been a wonderful mother to them," Isaac said seriously. "I know I've told you that before, but I want you to hear it again. Sarah would be grateful if she could see how you've loved her children, and I'm grateful every single day." Katherine turned on the bench to face him, taking his hands. "They made it easy to love them, and you made me believe I could. Isaac, before you, I thought love was something that would always be denied me. I thought I was too broken, too flawed. But you loved me anyway, and that changed everything." "You were never broken," Isaac said, drawing her to her feet and into his arms. "You were exactly what we needed, exactly when we needed you. Some things are just meant to be, Katherine. We were meant to be." They held each other in the quiet of their bedroom, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Outside, the prairie stretched in all directions, vast and full of possibility. This was their land, their home, their life. The years continued their inexorable march. Michael married Clara in a beautiful ceremony on the ranch, with half the county attending. They built a house on the northern section of the property, and Michael began managing that portion of the ranch, while Isaac gradually stepped back from the heaviest work. Daniel completed his training and opened a veterinary practice in Fargo, though he visited often and still considered the ranch home. Emma and Robert had 2 more children, giving Katherine 3 grandchildren to spoil and love. Michael and Clara eventually added 4 children of their own to the family. Katherine found that being a grandmother brought its own special joy, the pleasure of loving children without the constant weight of responsibility, the delight of watching the next generation grow. On Katherine's 45th birthday, Isaac presented her with a leather-bound book. Inside were pages and pages of photographs and memories, a record of their life together. There was a photograph from their wedding day, Katherine in her simple white dress and Isaac in his best suit. Pictures of the children at various ages, the ranch in different seasons, family gatherings and holidays. But the last page held something different. It was a letter written in Isaac's careful hand. "My dearest Katherine," it read. "When I met you 15 years ago, I was a man adrift, lost in grief and trying to raise 3 children alone. You changed everything. You brought light back into our lives, love back into our home. You took children who were not yours by blood and loved them as if they were, raising them with patience and wisdom and grace. You built a home with me, not just a house but a true home filled with warmth and laughter and love. You faced hardship and challenge and never once complained or wavered. You are my partner, my love, my best friend, the answer to every prayer I ever whispered in the dark. I already had children. I just needed you as my wife. And you have been the most extraordinary wife, mother, and woman I could ever have imagined. Every day with you is a gift. Every moment is a treasure. I love you more with each passing year, and I will love you until I draw my last breath. You are my heart. Forever yours, Isaac. Katherine read through tears, her hand pressed to her mouth. Isaac wrapped his arms around her from behind, his own eyes damp. Every word is true, he murmured against her hair. I love you, Katherine whispered. I love you so much it sometimes feels like I can't contain it all. You don't have to contain it, Isaac said. Just give it to me and I'll give you mine, and we'll keep doing that for the rest of our lives. They stood together at the window of their bedroom, looking out at the ranch they had built, the life they had created. In the distance, Katherine could see the lights from Michael and Clara's house, smoke rising from their chimney. Somewhere out there, Emma was tucking her children into bed, and Daniel was probably reading some veterinary journal by lamplight. This was her family. These were her people. This was the life she had never believed she could have, the love she had thought was forever beyond her reach. And it was all real, all hers, all beautifully, perfectly hers. As Katherine grew older, she became a respected matriarch of the community. Younger women sought her advice on everything from marriage to child rearing to managing a household. She never spoke about her inability to bear children unless asked directly. And then she was honest about her experience while emphasizing that it had not prevented her from having a full and joyful life. One young woman, newly married and recently informed by a doctor that she would never conceive, came to Katherine in tears. Katherine held her and shared her own story, the pain and shame she had felt, the rejection she had endured, and then the miracle of finding Isaac and becoming a mother in a way she had never anticipated. Your life is not over, Katherine told the young woman firmly. It's not even diminished. It's just going to look different than you expected, and different doesn't mean less. There are children everywhere who need love, whether they're orphans needing adoption or stepchildren needing a mother or nieces and nephews who need an extra adult who cares. And there are men who will love you for yourself, not for what your body can or cannot do. Don't give up on happiness. Don't give up on love. The young woman left comforted, and Katherine felt a deep satisfaction in being able to help someone facing what she had once faced. Her pain had not been wasted. It had been transformed into wisdom and compassion that she could share with others. Isaac's health began to decline when he was in his early 60s. Nothing dramatic, just the slow accumulation of aches and pains, the weariness that comes from a lifetime of hard physical labor. Katherine nursed him through bouts of rheumatism and the lingering effects of an old injury to his back. Michael took over most of the ranch management, though Isaac still consulted on major decisions. They had been married 23 years when Isaac sat Katherine down one evening and broached a subject he had been thinking about for some time. I want to make sure you're taken care of, he said seriously. I've been to the lawyer and I've updated my will. Everything goes to you first, Katherine. The ranch, the money, all of it. The children will inherit after you're gone, but I want you to have security for the rest of your life. Isaac Quinn, don't talk like that, Katherine said, her voice sharp with fear. You're not dying anytime soon. We're all dying, sweetheart, just at different speeds, Isaac said gently. And I'm not planning on going anywhere soon, but I'm 20 years older than you and I've lived a hard life. I need to know that if something happens to me, you'll be all right. Katherine took his weathered hands in hers. I'll be devastated if something happens to you, but I'll survive, because that's what we do. We survive, and we keep loving the people we have left, and we honor the ones we've lost by living fully. Isaac smiled, that slow, warm smile that still made her heart flutter. When did you get so wise? When I married you and let you teach me what really matters in life. They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity. Each touch a reaffirmation of their bond, each kiss a promise. Afterward, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, and Katherine thanked God for every day she had been given with this extraordinary man. Isaac did live many more years, defying his own predictions. He saw Michael's youngest child born, a daughter named Katherine in honor of the grandmother who had loved the family so well. He walked Emma's oldest daughter down the aisle when she married. He celebrated Daniel's success as one of the most respected veterinarians in the territory, now turned state. North Dakota achieved statehood in 1889, and the Quinns celebrated along with everyone else in Fargo. Their ranch had been part of the growth and development of the region, and they took pride in what they and their neighbors had built together. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the family threw them a grand celebration. The ranch house was filled with children, grandchildren, friends, and neighbors. There was music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. Katherine wore a new dress in deep blue silk, and Isaac had gotten a new suit made for the occasion. When Isaac stood to make a toast, the room fell silent. He looked around at all the faces, family and friends, the community they had helped build, and then his eyes found Katherine. 30 years ago, Isaac said, his voice carrying across the room, I was a widowed father of 3, lost and struggling. Then Katherine Bennett walked into my life and everything changed. I knew from almost the first moment that I loved her, but she tried to push me away. She thought she couldn't give me what I needed, couldn't be what I needed, but she was wrong. He crossed to Katherine and took her hand, drawing her to her feet beside him. Katherine has been everything I needed and more than I ever deserved. She loved my children as her own. She built a home with me. She weathered every storm at my side. She made me laugh when I wanted to give up. She believed in me when I doubted myself. She is my partner, my love, my heart. I told her once that I already had children and I just needed her as my wife. That was true then and it's true now. Katherine Quinn, you are the best decision I ever made, the greatest blessing of my life. Here's to 30 years, and to however many more God grants us together. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Katherine was crying, and so were half the people in attendance. She threw her arms around Isaac's neck and kissed him, not caring who was watching, not caring about anything except this moment and this man and this beautiful life they had built together. Emma stood and raised her glass. To Katherine and Isaac, who showed all of us what real love looks like. To my parents, because that's what you are, both of you. Thank you for everything you've given us. We love you. To Katherine and Isaac. The room chorused and glasses clinked in celebration. The party continued late into the night, but eventually, people began to leave, until only the immediate family remained. The grandchildren had fallen asleep in various corners, and the adult children were gathering them up to head home. Emma hugged Katherine tightly before she left. Thank you for loving us, she whispered. Thank you for being my mother when I needed one so desperately. Thank you for letting me, Katherine whispered back. You made me a mother, Emma, all 3 of you did. You gave me a gift beyond measure. After everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Katherine and Isaac sat on their porch one more time, as they had done so many times over the past 3 decades. Are you happy, Katherine? Isaac asked, though he surely knew the answer. I'm so happy I sometimes think I might burst from it, Katherine said honestly. Isaac, I came to Fargo broken and ashamed, believing my life was over before it had truly begun. You saved me. This family saved me. We saved each other, Isaac corrected. I was drowning in grief and guilt, and you threw me a lifeline. We built this life together, Katherine, every bit of it. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled and the prairie wind whispered through the grass. This was home. This was love. This was the life Katherine had never dared to dream possible. Isaac lived to see his 75th birthday, celebrating surrounded by his vast extended family. He died peacefully in his sleep on a cold February night, Katherine in his arms. She woke to find him gone, and the grief was a physical pain, a tearing in her chest that made breathing difficult. But she survived it, as she had survived every other hardship in her life. She leaned on her children and grandchildren, on the community that loved her, on the faith that had sustained her through so many trials. She kept the ranch running with Michael's help, remaining active and involved even as she aged. Katherine Quinn lived to be 83 years old, and when she died, it was surrounded by 4 generations of the family she had helped build. Her obituary in the Fargo newspaper called her a pioneer, a beloved mother and grandmother, a pillar of the community. But more than that, she was remembered as a woman who had faced rejection and pain and had chosen love anyway. Who had believed she was broken but had instead turned out to be exactly what was needed. At her funeral, Emma, now an elderly woman herself, stood to speak about the woman who had raised her. "Katherine Quinn was not my mother by birth," Emma said, her voice strong despite her tears. "But she was my mother in every way that mattered. When my father brought her into our lives, I was afraid. I thought she was trying to replace the mother I had lost. But Katherine never tried to replace anyone. She just loved us, wholly and completely, asking nothing in return. She showed me what it means to be a woman of strength and grace. She taught me that family is built on love and commitment, not just blood. She proved that a life can take unexpected turns and still be beautiful, still be full, still be exactly what it was meant to be." Emma's voice broke, and she paused to compose herself. "My father told Katherine once that he already had children and just needed her as his wife. But the truth is, we needed her too. We needed her love, her wisdom, her laughter, her strength, and she gave us all of that and more. The legacy she leaves is not just this ranch or this family, though both are remarkable. Her legacy is the love she poured into every person she touched. That love will continue long after we're all gone. Rest in peace, Mother, and thank you for choosing us." There was not a dry eye in the church. Katherine was laid to rest beside Isaac in the cemetery overlooking their ranch, their headstones side by side for eternity. On her stone, beneath her name and dates, was an inscription chosen by her children. "She loved us as her own and taught us what it means to build a family." The ranch remained in the Quinn family for generations, each new generation adding to the legacy that Katherine and Isaac had begun. And whenever anyone asked about the woman in the old photographs, the woman with the gentle smile and the strength in her eyes, they were told the story of Katherine Bennett Quinn, who had been told she was barren and broken, but who had instead become the heart of a family, the center of a community, and a testament to the truth that love, not biology, is what truly makes a mother. Her story was passed down through the generations, a reminder that the paths we think are closed often lead to destinations more wonderful than anything we could have imagined. That rejection and pain can be transformed into purpose and joy. That family is built not just through birth, but through the daily choice to love and commit and show up, again and again, no matter what. Katherine's great-great-grandchildren would grow up hearing about the ancestor who had been rejected for being barren, but who had built a legacy that touched hundreds of lives. They would learn that she had married a cowboy widower with 3 children, and that he had said the words that changed her life forever. "I already have children. I just need you as my wife." And they would understand, as Katherine had eventually understood, that sometimes our perceived weaknesses are actually our greatest strengths. That the things we think disqualify us from love are often the very things that lead us to the love we were meant to find all along. Katherine's story was one of heartbreak transformed into hope, of rejection transformed into acceptance, of barrenness transformed into abundance. Not the abundance of biological children, but the abundance of love, purpose, connection, and legacy that came from choosing to open her heart despite her fear, from accepting Isaac's love despite her shame, from becoming a mother to children who needed her even though she could not give birth to them. In the end, Katherine's inability to bear children had not been a curse but a gift. It had brought her to Fargo, to Isaac, to Emma and Michael and Daniel. It had allowed her to love without fear, to build without anxiety, to create a family in the truest sense of the word. And it had proven that a woman's worth has nothing to do with her fertility and everything to do with her heart, her strength, her capacity to love and to keep loving even when the world says she is not enough. Katherine had been enough. More than enough. She had been exactly what was needed, exactly when she was needed, and her life had been a beautiful testament to the power of love to heal, to transform, and to create families in ways both expected and miraculous.